What's good, CDL fans, and welcome back to more Rostermania coverage. Today, we're going to be using the Rostermania tracker, as you see on screen, to build out some rosters based on the most updated rumors, as well as some other things that we've heard or seen throughout the last couple weeks, right? So, we're going to do our best to make these rosters realistic, but fun. And, let's just kick right into them. And we're going to start off with the LA Thieves, where Dan Ghosty, as you can see, I've removed him over here from the team, and it looks like Celium is going to be taking his place. The free agents at the bottom down there is a bit of a cluster, so don't really mind the whole bottom section down here where I'm at. But Celium looks like he's going to be taking the place of Dan Ghosty. Now, there is rumors that the Thieves are looking at Joe Deceives, Abizi, or even Neptune to replace Dylan Envoy. Something kind of tells me, even though I don't necessarily that they're going to do it, that Dylan Envoy might be on the way out. I just got that feeling that because we went from rumors of the Thieves sticking as a four-man team to potentially replacing Dan Ghosty to potentially replacing Envoy, right? They went from full squad staying together to a two-man change. We're gonna go with maybe the hot take here, and I'm gonna move Envoy. Even though I personally don't want to see Envoy drop from this team, I kind of think they're going to replace him, and the guy that I think might be coming in here is going to be Neptune. Now, I think Joe Deceives might be the best fit on this roster. I don't see Toronto Ultra letting him go, and I also just don't see the Thieves buying out Abizi. I think buying out Joe, buying out Abizi is going to cost them money. I guess if they sell Dan Ghosty, sell Dylan Envoy, if they're both restricted free agents, which they would end up being, maybe they use that money to buy someone out. But we're gonna go with Neptune because we haven't heard a lot about Nep, so I don't even know where I'd put him anyways. So we're gonna throw him on the Thieves. Now I want to talk a bit about Atlanta FaZe and the Toronto Ultra. Abe over here, I haven't heard a single thing about Abe so far in this free agency. I don't think he's gonna end up on this roster, but I do think Toronto is gonna find a way to pair up Joe D with his duo and Abizi. These guys are best friends. They're always playing together on stream, playing ranked, playing eights, things like that, and they obviously want to team together based on the rumors, and I definitely see this happening. Now, there was also there's two rumored Ultra rosters that I saw. It was these two plus Draza and Kenny, and these two plus Draza and Kleenex. And I really like the Draza and Kleenex team. You bring Kleenex back as a flex, and you bring Draza in to be a bit of your main AR. I mean, this would be like a very aggressive, super fast team on the map. But from what we saw in BO6, if BO7 is anything similar, I think this team would be dirty. I think this team would be super fun to watch. And, as long as they're getting their kills with the pace they would play at, I think this team would be nasty. And obviously, you've got chemistry across the board from a bunch of these players, people who have teamed together in the past, people who want to team together now. So I think this is what I'm rocking with for the Ultra. Now we go over to Atlanta FaZe, because there has been some rumors and speculation about what FaZe is going to do. And one guy that has been targeted by FaZe apparently and just continues to come up in conversation is 04. Some people think he might not actually end up on FaZe, but the only things I've heard or seen rumor-wise for 04 is to FaZe. So that to me feels like a likely spot to go for him to pair up with Simp. And then his duo in Abuza is also a player potentially heading on over here to Atlanta FaZe based on the rumors that we've been seeing. 04 and Abuza have been together for 2 years. Maybe they want to stick together, head on over to Atlanta FaZe with Simp. And then there's also rumors of them trying to buy out Rencor from the Miami Heretics. Now, I do think this would be difficult. I think they were talking about Scump said on his stream that Zuma said on his stream, so it's a bit of like a he said, she said type situation, so take it with a grain of salt that Rencor's buyout was like only 100K, which, 100K is a lot of money, don't get me wrong, but I guess for a caliber of Rencor's, for a player of Rencor's caliber, that's, I guess, not that much. It sounds like, based on the way they were talking about it, so especially if they sell Abizi, I could see them flipping that cash and buying out Rencor here to join Simp, 04, and Abuza as their FaZe roster. I do also think it gets interesting if, Dylan Envoy's available, if Dan Ghosty's available, maybe someone like this could take one of these spots and end up being cheaper. But for now, I'm going to stick with this rumored roster for FaZe. Then we got the Vegas Falcons and the Genomates, who I think are both two rosters we know have some money to spend. Genomates already apparently tried to buy out Joe Deceives, had their offer denied. We know the Falcons are interested in Joe Deceives. So, we know these teams have money, right? We know they're willing to spend. Me personally, I don't think RC is going to be on this team, so I'm just going to move him now. I do think Exnid and Pred probably stay on this roster, especially Pred. So we're going to keep those two there, and we're going to put two other players on this team. I think one player I wouldn't mind seeing go here is Dan Ghosty. This is my guy. I would love to see him go get his bag, head on over to the Falcons. Let me actually move my camera for you so you can see them a little bit easier while we're doing this. But Dan Ghosty coming on over to be one of the ARs to team up Pred and Exnid still leaves another AR spot available unless they still want to run Exnid on the flex, which I think he's better off on the SMG, but I guess they could try it and pick up a sub instead. It's tough trying to do the Falcons roster because we know how much money they have, right? Like, we know these guys are capable of kind of buying out anybody, really making what seems like anything possible. And based on what we have so far, right, there wouldn't really be too many buyouts, too many big things happening for the side of the Falcons. But I do think an AR player that we know can work with Dan Ghoster, we've seen has success with him in the past, that is, you know, a free agent that's available, that's a good player, is Nasty, right? I think Nasty's a guy we haven't heard a lot about in this free agency. Maybe some people think he's going to team back up with an EU roster, but I think this Falcons squad is one of those teams that's like competitively going to be in your champs running, like in making champs, maybe even being a top 6 team. This to me just feels like one of those teams where like they're picking up a couple of the good free agents. I really just don't know what Falcons do if they're not able to buy out a guy like a BZ or Joe Deceives, or maybe they're still able to get Cellium, right? We know they're in the talks for them to get Cell, but I think he's gonna end up on Thieves if they're having Dan Ghosty be restricted. This is just kind of, I think, what I'm cooking up for the Falcons. Now, there was also a rumor I saw on the Reddit, which came from a source that I've never even heard of, and it wasn't in English. I don't remember what language it was in, but that was saying the Surge and the Rocker are interested in picking up the full omit roster heading into next season, which I think is realistic. When we did our podcast a couple weeks ago talking about some Rostermania predictions on Around the CDL, we had the full omit roster going to the Ravens. Now, we haven't heard anything about Slasher, so to me, that either means he's staying on the Ravens or he could potentially be retiring, right? When you don't hear anything, those tend to be the only two options. I could very well see the Surge here getting the entirety of the omit GG roster that played at EWC, especially because if the other rumored team is the Minnesota Rocker, and we know they've released 3 of the 4 players, right? Only keeping Estriel, I think they kind of want to build around him. So we're going to give the Surge the entirety of omit, which I mean, I imagine if you're a Surge fan, kind of is unfortunate because your team went to like 4 grand finals this year. I know they didn't win any, but then to pick up a full challengers team probably feels kind of like that, probably kind of hurts a bit. But I think this team is good. They got chemistry, and you got 2 young rookies that we really don't know the ceiling of, the potential of. So for Surge, we're rocking with the full omit squad, and you get Mac back, right? He's in the Surge jersey here on the screen. Looking at the other teams that are available, right? We still got Super up here solely by himself for the Miami Heretics. C9, I guess Spart is staying because Kremp and Gwyn announced free agency. Spart hasn't said anything. I'm kind of would be surprised. I mean, no disrespect to Spart. I just think maybe like there's some other options on here that could be better, especially when you have a guy like Sib, who I know had a down year probably from the worst year of his career in the league, and C9 struggled, but I still think some people might still want to play with him. Like, I still think he's a good player. So I don't really know what they're doing with Spart. And then obviously Ravens and Rocker, I guess they both have one piece. We still have a spot on Boston Breach to fill. One guy that I think has been slightly linked to Boston, which I think could make sense, is Geo. Obviously they are releasing Awakening, or at least he's a free agent. So I think Geo coming in to take this spot to team up with the other core 3 in Boston with Perch, Snoopy, and Cammy feels realistic. And I definitely think is an upgrade on Awakening. I think Geo's an upgrade for sure. I think potentially a core piece for a team like Gentlemates could be a guy like Real, who is a free agent, right? Gentlemates, I think people want them to build a French roster, right? Because it's a French organization. People just feel like one day that's going to be a thing. Right now, it doesn't really feel possible, but building maybe a European roster, which a lot of people also speculate they could do, or buying out some big free agents or buying out some big players could be another thing with Gentlemates definitely having some money. But I think Real could be an interesting core piece for them to kind of build around. I also think a guy, and I don't know how realistic this would be, but a guy that would pair well with Real, allowing him to really focus on his slaying, which, I mean, we see the upside that Real has at getting kills, could be someone like Envoy if he's available. We know Envoy is able to enable his sub duo. He's going to get in the hill, and I think letting Real kind of run around and get kills while Envoy does the rest could be a pretty interesting sub duo for Gentlemates, especially because we know they have money to buy Envoy off his restricted contract at the Thieves and, you know, pay these guys well. And then trying to round out this Gentlemates roster, it gets pretty tough, right? Because there's some good free agents down here. There's also some like maybe more mid-league average players or below. I think maybe bringing in a guy like Cobra to run potentially your flex role could be an interesting option here. He's played a flex in the past, played an AR, played an SMG mostly last year, I believe, in Challengers. I could see him maybe coming in and being a bit of a flex option for this Gentlemates team. And then on the main AR side of things, honestly, I really don't know. I mean, maybe you bring in someone like Beans to kind of play an AR role. I mean, Beans can also play a bit faster, so like you wouldn't have a super slow team. Maybe like talked about earlier with the Ultra, is like having a team with like slower players might not be the move going into next season based on what we might know about BO7. So maybe this is the roster for Genomates. It feels like it looks weird on paper because you got 3 EU players, right? You got a Spanish player, a French player, a UK player, and obviously an American player and Dylan Envoy, which this team feels weird, but I kind of like the way the players fit together. I doubt this would happen, but this is kind of what I got for now. Now going over to Cloud9, I think an option to start building around Sib here could be a guy like Kenny. Now, apparently Kenny wants to stay in Texas, right? He doesn't want to move out to LA where C9 headquarters is, but I've also heard people like Dylan Attach saying he thinks even more teams are coming to Texas this season. He thinks there's gonna be like 9 teams in Texas, I believe is what I heard him say on a stream. I could see C9 being one of those teams, right? They're obviously an org, like they don't apparently like to spend money too much, but they definitely have money. I mean, everyone knows Cloud9 in esports for the most part, and being out in LA definitely does not help them in online matches and with their ping and stuff like that. So I could see, this is me totally speculating, C9 coming to Texas, Kenny being able to stay here and teaming up with Sib to be the ARs on this team. Then maybe they bring in another guy like Kismet, right? Another the core veteran roster here of players that we know have winning capabilities. We've seen Sib and Kismet play together in the past, so this could be an interesting trio. And then honestly here, bro, if I'm C9, low-key, I think you just bring back Gwyn. I know he announced free agency, but teaming Gwyn, you know, a Slayer next to Kismet, who's a selfless superstar enabler player, as we always like to say, I think it helped get the best from Gwyn. You got Kenny that can kind of play a bit of your flex, or he could be your main, right? Sib definitely can flex, but I feel like sometimes he can be a bit slower with the AR. He definitely lays down damage and gets in good spots, but I feel like you sometimes can see a gap between him and his SMGs like we saw this year on C9 a bunch. But I think this is a low-key team that could have some high upside if they're all playing well, but also could have some downside if they're getting fried, right? We know Kenny's had some rough ones, Sib's had some rough runs. I mean, Kiz was on a bad team this year, so it's hard to say, and then Gwyn, even especially on LAN, has had some rough ones, but got a bit better towards the end of this last season. But now we got 3 squads remaining, all with 1 player left, which helps us sort of build around, but there's plenty of players that I feel like deserve spots on teams. I don't really know where to start here personally. I think I'm going to start with the Minnesota Rocker. I don't know why. I just kind of like have some ideas for them potentially. I'm going to throw Kremp on this team to team up with Estriel. I think these are just 2 like solid SMG players that I feel like kind of may fit the Rocker budget based on what we know like in the players they've signed in the past, which I could definitely see them bringing in a guy like him. The ARs feel like that's where it gets like the most difficult with some of these players. I think there's better SMGs available than there are ARs currently, and mostly throughout free agency. Does the ARs to pair up with Rocker is definitely tough to pick. I think one AR I'm going to throw on this team is going to be Caesar Sky. Some people think he'll get a shot. Some people think he won't get a shot to start next season. I'm kind of 50-50 on him. I think we know Skies can be a really good player, but also had a really rough year this season, so it's pretty tough to say, but we're going to throw him in as the main AR on this team, and now we just need a faster paced AR, a bit of a flex option to pair alongside these guys. And I mean, I'm going to be honest, I got no clue who that's going to be. I have absolutely no idea, so we're going to move on from Rocker real quick, and we're going to talk about some of the other 2 teams that are available. For the Heretics, I think the Spanish roster here would probably be done at this point, right? If Real's gone, if Rencor's gone, I could see them bringing back Metals. He is a free agent, but just like, if they don't bring him back, I don't know what roster he gets on. I do think he's a league caliber player. Friendship cheese is a thing, and I don't know what Metals relationships are like with other players in the league, so I could see them bringing back Metals and maybe going with a bit of a EU type of roster. Maybe bring in a guy like Afro over here to pair up with Metals as a sub duo. Metals is more of the dirty work player, right? Where Real's the one getting kills, and Afro's definitely a guy who in BO6 was running in challengers. I think could have some good slaying upside here for this team and be their SMG, but now they would also need an AR or a main AR on this team because Super definitely can flex. And maybe, I don't know if this would happen because I know the team this guy currently is on is rivals with the Heretics, the 2 Spanish orgs, but maybe Insight. Maybe you bring in 2, you know, English players to pair alongside with 2 Spanish players here and give yourself a bit of a European roster. Insight is your main AR, Super as more of your faster paced one, bit of a flex, and then your 2 SMGs. I don't mind the roles on this team, actually. I don't mind the roles on this team. I don't know if Insight would go here though, because of the rivalry Toronto Ultra Koi have with obviously the Heretics organization being 2 Spanish orgs. But now we're dwindling down to our final teams, some of our final few teams. Looking at the Ravens, I think there are 2 SMGs still available, one of which I don't think you can see because he's behind my camera, that I think should be on spots. The first one is going to be Nero. I think Nero should be on a team. I think Nero just has really high upside. He has a low floor, but I still think he's a player that should be on a team. And a guy who I think has earned his spot after just one event that I don't know what's happening with him in Ultra is going to be Abe. I don't know if Abe and Nero work together necessarily. I mean, I guess we have to see, but I think this is kind of at the point where like these last few players are just kind of players I think should be on teams, even if they don't maybe make full sense. So I'm throwing Abe on this team here with Nero. And then that last spot, this like flex AR spot, honestly, I got no idea. Maybe I'll just throw Spartan here because I think there could be a world where he's staying on C9. I know in our hypothetical he's not, but if he hasn't been released from C9 yet, maybe he ends up on a team, likely C9. But for us, we're just going to throw him on Ravens. I think he fills that role in between, you know, Slasher and the subs. So that's where he's going to go. But now we're down to Rocker. Only one spot left here for these guys. I have no idea who it would be. I do think one guy who needs to be on a team that I didn't find a spot for is Johnny. I think Johnny absolutely should be on a team, and it would pain me to see him not, but we're gonna throw Tej. We're gonna throw Tej on the flex here. Why not, right? We're just gonna put Tej on this. He just feels like a guy who will find his way on a team. So we're going to put Tej. The last two rosters to me always feel like ones that just aren't like the greatest, don't make a full sense, but that's just kind of how it ends up being. Let me hide my camera. These are the teams. These are the rosters for our little hypothetical here on August 5th. As I'm recording this at 8:30 in the morning. Let me know what you guys think. Which rosters do you like? Which rosters do you hate? And are there any of these teams that you actually think could realistically happen? Because a bunch of these are based off rumors, but honestly, probably when you're watching this video, there's been something has come out countering one of these teams more than likely. But that's just how it goes. The Jake Jinx is in effect. If you watch my watch parties, you know all about it. But thank you all for watching. Make sure to sub for more Rostermania content, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next one.